Chinese measure words, why they feel so scary and why they are actually not. Many learners tell me very honestly, Chinese measure words drive me crazy. And yes, I get it. I really do. If you come from a language like German or English, you are used to looking for rules, clear categories, clear tables, and then you meet Chinese. A language that allows tons of homophones, uses very little visible grammar. With measure words, this feeling hits especially hard. There are many of them, they don't map neatly to nouns, and you are never sure you picked the wrong one. Now, here is something important first. Measure words in Chinese are actually very open, and they are very forgiving. For example, 一个猫,一个狗. You hear this all the time. Strictly speaking, yes, it should be 一只猫,一只狗. But in everyday conversation, it is not a big deal, because the meaning is perfect clear, and nobody stops conversation to question it. Up to this point, many learners think, okay, maybe Chinese measure words just have no rules. And that's a big illusion. The problem is not that Chinese measure words have no logic. The problem is where you are looking for that logic. Many learners try to understand a measure word through how words sound, through pinyin, through pronunciation. But in Chinese, sound does not carry meaning. If you try to solve a meaning problem on the level of sound, you are automatically looking in the wrong place. I often show this to my students with just one example. 是 Same pronunciation, complete different meanings. If sound carried meaning in Chinese, this language simply wouldn't work. And here is a core point. Measure words in Chinese do not follow the sound logic. They follow character logic. They are not sound rules. They are meaning markers. Once you look at the characters, a lot of things suddenly start to make sense. 面 means something like surface or a flat side. That's why we say 一面墙,一面镜子,一面旗子, a wall, a mirror, or a flag. Basically, things with flat surface. 本 is related to books or bound things. That's why you say 一本书,一本杂志,一本字典, or 一本日记. A book, a magazine, a dictionary, a diary. They are all bound, book-like things. 科 contains the wood radical. That's why you see 一棵树 or 一棵小草, a tree, or a small plant. Now let's move from theory to practice. Very roughly, you can think of measure words in two groups. One group is pretty easy. They are situational measure words like 一杯水,一瓶水, cup of water, a bottle of water. You already know this idea from German or English, and this is not the real problem. The real difficulty is with fixed combination. But even there, measure words are not about strict rules. They are descriptive. They describe the shape or typical property of the noun. For example, think about this. If a Chinese person hears 一只狗 and 一条狗, both mean a dog, but the picture in their head is very different. 条 is often used for long, narrow things, like 一条河, a river. So 一条狗 usually makes you imagine a dog with a long body. 只, on the other hand, is a more neutral measure word for animal. So 一只狗 sounds more like a general compact animal, maybe a small, fluffy dog. Same noun, different measure words, different images in your head. Now, at this point, many people ask, I can never remember all of this. Yes, that part is hard. So here are two very practical tips. First, memorize the very common combinations. Treat them like fixed expressions. Second, and this is really important, if you're not sure, use 个 一个笔，一个电脑. That's totally understandable. Native speakers themselves use 个 all the time. If you use no measure word at all, putting a number directly in front of a noun can actually change the meaning. So in that sense, using the wrong measure word is often safer than using none. Because with no measure word, the meaning can shift. That's why 个 is your safety net, your emergency backup. And finally, let me be very clear. Measure words are not what breaks your conversation. They are open, they are forgiven. Learn the most common one. When in doubt, use 个. That's enough for real life.